provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines first at 9. Turning defense into attack. World Sri Lankan Association accuses the UN of neglecting its duties and obligations.
By allowing Resolution 30/1 to be adopted, the Council has been negligent in its duties and obligations set out in General Assembly Resolution 60/251.
Unravelling assassination plot. Ministry of Law and Order recommends to place DIG Nalaka De Silva on mandatory leave. Can't please all. The government grants permission for a 4% bus fare hike, somewhere short of what bus operators demanded. Refuting Times of India, Minister of Civil Aviation insists that the Palale airport won't be given to India for development. Inter-Korean summit, leaders of North Korea and South Korea meet, seeking to deepen bilateral exchanges. Good evening. No more margins. The central bank imposes 100% deposit requirement against letters of credit for non-commercial motor vehicles. We'll bring you that story later on in the bulletin. We begin with a top story tonight on First at 9. I'm Indivari Amuatta. President of the World Sri Lankan Associations in Zurich, Nirmala Liyanapattabandi, charges that the United Nations Human Rights Council had neglected its duties and obligations set out in the UN General Assembly by permitting the adoption of Resolution 30/1, which Sri Lanka co-sponsored. Addressing the 39th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council session yesterday, Liyanapattabandi also criticized the government's decision to accept and endorse these recommendations and conclusions devoid of a debate or vote.
In 2015, newly elected government of Sri Lanka made a series of pledges to UNHRC by co-sponsoring Resolution 30/1. Assuming the university recognized concept of presumption of innocence is valid for UN and its organs, the panel who prepared the report had failed to conclusively establish that Sri Lankan forces are guilty of any of the charges leveled against them. Even before the OISL report was officially released, government accepted and endorsed its conclusions and recommendations, which led this council to follow suit and adopt Resolution 30/1 with no debate or vote. Leadership of Sri Lanka had changed in 2015, and obviously they had a political motivation to discredit their predecessors. Even after 4 years, government has not established some of the charges. The well-established judicial system has delivered verdicts on some war-related cases, but several others remain unresolved. Though some military and intelligence people were detained for long periods and questioned by authorities. One cannot be prosecuted for a crime not committed just because your government has accepted some charges with no proper evaluation of facts. Any measure by the UN or its subsidiary organs against an individual nation can have a potential effect on ordinary citizens of the nation who may not have a direct voice at the UN. By allowing Resolution 30/1 to be adopted, the Council has been negligent in its duties and obligations set out in General Assembly Resolution 60/251, mainly the UN Charter.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe admits that certain areas in Colombo lack education facilities for the Muslim community. Addressing a function held at the Darussalam College in Maligawata this morning, the Premier pledged to improve educational facilities of the Muslim community by increasing the number of schools dedicated for their education.
We have already allocated some plots of land for a Muslim school in Vallavath area. We expect to build a Muslim school there soon. It will serve the people in the Colombo South area. We have also promised another school for Central Colombo. I told the parliamentarian in the area to look for a plot of land as we are ready to build this school. Colombo Central, Colombo North and Borala areas have a large number of Muslim population. We have noticed that they do not have enough schools for their education. Therefore, we need to build more schools to improve the education levels of those students.
The Ministry of Law and Order recommends the National Police Commission to place Director of Terrorism Investigation Division, DIG Nalaka De Silva, on mandatory leave until investigations into the alleged assassination plot censuring President Maithripala Sirisena and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa are concluded. DIG Nalaka De Silva was transferred to the Police IT Division. Following other Derana's inquiry on the matter, the National Police Commission said that any decision on the relevant recommendation now rests with the Inspector General of Police.
Director of Operations of Anti-Corruption Force Namal Kumara recently revealed several voice recordings by Director of Terrorism Investigation Division DIG Nalaka De Silva, where he talked about a plot to assassinate the President and the former Defence Secretary. The Criminal Investigation Department immediately launched an investigation into the matter, and as a result, DIG De Silva was temporarily transferred to the Information Technology Division. The CID today presented a report to the Ministry of Law and Order on their finding of the preliminary investigation. After considering the findings in this report, the Ministry of Law and Order had recommended the National Police Commission to give mandatory leave for DIG Nalaka De Silva until the investigation into the allegation is fully completed. Meanwhile, several politicians expressed views on the matter today. They immediately remanded a joint opposition member when he was found to be a suspect. They aren't as keen to file the same B report against DIG Nalaka De Silva. Don't judge the entire police department just because of the negative behavior of several officers. I ask all politicians as well to not to disrupt the proceedings of the ongoing investigations by shouting in the parliament. The IGP said that there is a doubt about the authenticity of the voice recording even before an investigation into the matter was launched. This statement showed that he is biased, so we highly doubt that we can expect an unbiased result from this investigation. I spoke with the director of CID, Shani Abesekar, yesterday regarding this issue, and he told me that the investigation will conclude within a week. As the CID told me, all these recordings are being checked with the collaboration of a team from the Colombo University.
The government is of the view that Director of Operations of the organisation dubbed the Anti-Corruption Force, Namal Kumara, has acted as an informant of the police. The Cabinet co-spokesperson, Minister Dr. Rajda Senaratne, said this today in response to questions raised by journalists during the Cabinet media briefing.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයාත් ඝාතන කිරීමේ වෑයමක් පිළිබඳව කතා වෙනවා. මේක අද ඊ කතා වුණාද එමෙතුමා කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ එහෙම සාකච්ඡාවක් සිදු වුණේ නැහැ.
There was no such discussion during the cabinet. The CID is conducting investigations on the incident. The IGP has handed over a full report on the issue to the President and the Prime Minister. The government is also concerned of the faction that makes accusations because they are already police informants. He was paid 500,000 rupees to give information on the Rohingya issue, and he has done the same in the Kandy issue as well. The police say that they are yet to make a payment in relation to the Kandy issue. However, an investigation is being conducted at present.
කොහොම හරි මේ පිළිබඳව සම්පූර්ණ පරීක්ෂණයක් කරනවා. තුමාලට යෝජනා කරනවා ඊයේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදීත් මේ DIG වරයාව තනමාරුවක් කිරීමක් නොවේ ඔහුවත් අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න නැත්නම් ඔහුගෙන් ප්‍රශ්න කිරීම නිකන් චෝදනාවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරයි කියලා.
He can't be arrested just over these allegations. He can only be interdicted after investigations.
සේවය අත්විඳවන්න පුළුවන්. අමතුමාගේ නාමල් කුමාර කියන පුද්ගලයා කරන චෝදනාවල බැලුවම ඔහු අර මහනුවර සිද්ධිය සම්බන්ධ කරනවා. ඒ DIG වරයා කියනවා.
The DIG says that Namal Kumara worked for him. The President said that even he didn't know until a case was filed against CGS. That's how it works under this government.
ඒගොල්ලෝ පොලිස්පතිට දන්නවනේ. මෙයා පොලිස් ඔත්තුකරුවෙක් නම් පැහැදිලිව මේ නාල කුමාර නැමැත්ත ඉදිරිපත් කරන මේ හඬපටේ තියෙන තොරතුරු නිවැරදි වෙන්න එපා. මොකද එතුමා කලින් සපයපු තොරතුරු නිවැරදි නම් මේක විතරක් වැරදි වෙන්න විදියක් නැහැ. හඬපටේ ඔහුගේ නෙවෙයි කියලා ඔහු ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනවා සම්පූර්ණයෙන්.
The government has decided to increase bus fares by 4% from midnight tomorrow following a discussion with private bus operators. The Cost of Living Committee met yesterday, and it was also recommended that prices of domestic gas be increased, although it was recommended that the price of milk powder be reduced.
Minister of Transport Nimal Siripal De Silva says that bus fares will be increased by 4% with effect from midnight tomorrow. The Minister of Transport, however, added that the minimum fare will not be changed and will remain at 12 rupees. The minister also said that the decision was taken following a discussion held with representatives of private bus trade unions at the Ministry of Transport today. During the meeting, Minister Nima Siripal de Silva had stated that the 10% bus fare hike requested by the trade unions cannot be approved, and according to the instructions of the committee of experts appointed in this regard, only a bus fare hike of 4% can be granted, with effect from midnight tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Finance and Mass Media released a statement today saying that total tax for a 1 kilogram of sugar is only 42 rupees and therefore the need to increase price of sugar does not exist. The ministry also warns of legal action against importers or distributors who increase price of sugar based on the new tax system. However, in a media briefing held in Colombo today, Sugar Importers Association announced that the wholesale price of sugar will be increased by 15 rupees per kilogram.
The current parity rate per kilo of sugar landed cost up to the harbour is only 55 or 55.50. But the taxes alone come to another 50 rupees. And today our landed cost of sugar is more than 105 rupees per kilo. So this is what we are explaining to the government. First point is that sugar should remain under the Special Commodity Tax Act. 2. This complicated tax mechanism should be abolished.
On another note, All Island Bakery Owners Association has decided to reduce the price of a loaf of bread by 5 rupees. The decision was taken following a meeting between the Bakery Owners Association and Minister of Industry and Commerce, Rishad Badiuddin.
The Times of India published an article on Monday claiming that state-run Airports Authority of India will now be developing the Palale Airport in the northern province, which is a strategic region for India. The article outlined India's interest in infrastructure development projects in Sri Lanka, given China's role on similar projects following Sri Lanka's decades-long conflict with the LTTE. However, making a special statement in Parliament today, Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Nima Siripal de Silva denied any notion of such a plan, saying a decision to hand over the Palale Airport to any country does not exist.
Publishing an article on the 17th of September, the Times of India revealed that State-run Airports Authority of India has signed an agreement with India's Ministry of External Affairs to develop the Palale Airport in Sri Lanka. The article went on to say that the agreement for Palale has recently been signed by AAI's Executive Director of Land Management and Business Development, Anil Gupta, and Joint Secretary of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Sanjay Pandey. Quoting an unnamed AAI official, Times of India said Palale is an strategic area for India and that the airport will be Sri Lanka's first in the north, giving the northern people direct connectivity with places like southern India, Malaysia and Thailand. The article also revealed India has also offered to develop the Kankasanthure Airport along with the Mattala International Airport, abutting the Chinese-developed Hambantota Port. Quoting the official, the article went on to emphasize that following the end of war in the country, China became one of the largest developers of critical infrastructure in Sri Lanka, forcing India to speed up its own development assistance. However, Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation Nima Siripala de Silva refuted these claims by the Times of India today, saying that Sri Lanka has not planned to allow India to develop the Palale Airport. There is no such plan to give the Palale Airport to any country, including India. I presented a cabinet paper saying Palale must be developed by our Air Force itself. We found money to develop this airport, and as an airport where Airbus A320 aircrafts can be operated, we'll be able to operate both domestic and international flights from and to this airport then.
The Janata Vimukti Peramana says that it intends to put forward a candidate of their own for the looming presidential election in case the party fails to push through the 20th Amendment to the Constitution in Parliament. JVP's leader, parliamentarian Anurakumara Disanayake, spoke on the topic during a visit to Kandy, where a copy of the draft 20th Amendment to the Constitution was presented to Chief Prelate of the Malvatha chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thera.
There are several wrong definitions about the 20th Amendment. Some say that this is an effort to transfer the executive powers to the Prime Minister. But its initial advantage goes to former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. He has a chance to contest again. We never expect to change any clause of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution by this amendment.
පරස්පර යම් මතවාදයක් ගොඩනැගී තිබෙනවා ඔබතුමාලා මේ 20 වෙනි සංශෝධන ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතා නැවත බලයට ගෙනීම සඳහා විශේෂයෙන්ම රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්මයාගේ
We don't have any transaction with Mr. Wickremesinghe, but we know there are two fractions in the Mahinda Rajapaksa's camp. One represent Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the other represent Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. Gotabaya Rajapaksa can be the leader of this country, only Mahinda Rajapaksa cannot contest. Therefore, the team which represents Gotabaya, shouldn't they pass and approve the 20th Amendment to the Constitution?
ගෝඨාභයට අවස්ථාවක් ගත හැකි කියලා.
ඉදිරි ජනාධිපති වරණයේදී ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණ වෙනම අපේක්ෂකයෙක් ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමේ බලාපොරොත්තුවක් තිබෙනවා කියලා.
මේ 20 වෙනි සංශෝධනය සම්මත කරගන්න බැරි වුණොත්
We will do so only if we failed in the effort of passing the 20th Amendment to the Constitution. Further, the confidence on a common candidate was completely destroyed by President Maithripala Sirisena at the last election. The concept of common candidate is no more valid and we will never support a common candidate for this reason.
සංකල්පවල වළංගුතාවය අහුසු වී තිබෙනවා.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. We take a look at your business news now. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank has imposed a 100% margin deposit requirement against letters of credit opened with commercial banks for the importation of motor vehicles used for non-commercial purposes with immediate effect. Accordingly, letters of credit for the importation of these vehicle categories could be done only with a minimum cash margin of 100%. The decision to impose the margin deposit requirement is based on recent developments which, if not addressed, could threaten macroeconomic stability of the country. The imposition of the margin deposit requirement, together with the measures already taken by the government with regard to taxes applicable on motor vehicle imports, is expected to curb non-essential imports of motor vehicles and ease undue pressure on the current account of the balance of payments and the exchange rate. Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama reveals that Sri Lanka has received around $16 billion of investment proposals from Singapore over the past few months under the Free Trade Agreement. The minister was speaking at the Presidential Export Awards 2018 held yesterday. Addressing the event, the minister emphasized that investment protection is a benefit gained through free trade agreements that cannot be underestimated.
The first time we introduced an anti-dumping law to protect our domestic industries from unfair competition from abroad. For 15 years, previous regimes had been struggling to get this act passed in Parliament. We introduced a national export strategy and a national quality infrastructure strategy to help domestic firms to diversify their product base and compete with the rest of the world. All these three new strategies were co-chaired by the private sector and developed closely with their partnership. It is important to concentrate on attracting foreign direct investment into the tradable market, in the tradable sector. We have an investment promotion drive in Germany next week, and this will be followed by visits to Shanghai and Mumbai soon. Our mission to Japan earlier this year has already generated many strong leads, which we are now pursuing. To expand exports and increase FDI, we need to improve ease of doing business. Through the suite of FTAs that we're entering into, we are opening up new markets for our entrepreneurs. The benefit of FTAs in attracting foreign investment cannot be underestimated. The investment protection through the FTAs is essential, and we are already seeing this playing out following the Singapore FTA. Around $16 billion of investment proposals from Singapore have been received by us over the past few months. This, we believe, is the only way to go forward if we are to bring prosperity to our people. For your information, Vietnam has already signed 17 FTAs and they are currently negotiating 4 more. We also recognize the shortage of industrial land. Since 2002, no new exports zones have been set up, which is why we are now setting up 2 new zones, one in Millenia and the other one in Bingiria.
Sri Lanka's gross domestic product grew 3.7% in the second quarter of this year, accelerating from 3.2% growth in the first quarter. According to the Department of Census and Statistics, the agriculture sector grew 4.5% compared to a contraction a year earlier. And growth contracted 0.9% in real terms on top of a 4.8% contraction in the second quarter of 2017. Meanwhile, industry grew 2.3% and services sector grew 4.8% during the second quarter of this year. Sri Lankan shares ended marginally higher today, edging up from their 30-month closing low hit in the previous session as investors picked up battered shares while sentiment was weighed down by weak rupee and continued foreign selling. The all share price index today ended 0.6% firmer at 5,974.75 with a turnover of 657.2 million rupees, less than this year's daily average of 796.7 million rupees. Foreign investors in the meantime sold a net 207.8 million rupees worth of shares, extending the year-to-date net foreign outflow to 5.1 billion rupees worth of equities. We have Amanda Lokugamage from First Capital Holdings for a detailed report.
Market ended in a positive sentiment, reversing the negative trend seen for the last three sessions on the gains made by John Keells and Melsa. The all-share price index had volatile movement throughout the day, reaching an intraday high of 5,985 within the first half hour of trading, prior to closing at 5,975, gaining 4 points. 40% of turnover was derived from crossings, while volume had dropped by more than 50% compared to yesterday. A net foreign outflow was witnessed amidst high foreign participation.
And the local currency fell 0.6% today, hitting a fresh all-time low of 167 rupees and 41 cents against the US dollar, weighed down by importer demand or scarce US currency. The rupee, which weakened more than 2.8% this month, with it plummeting 8.3% so far this year, hit a fresh low for a sixth straight session today. Experts, however, make external factors responsible for the depreciation of the rupee and recommends control over export or rather import expenditure to tackle the situation.
As a response to what it calls unfair trade policies of China, the United States imposed tariffs on China, making Chinese-made products more expensive. Through the tariffs, the US expects to convince China of a policy change in consideration of risks to Chinese economy. China previously imposed duties on $50 billion of US products, targeting key parts of the US President Donald Trump's political base, such as farmers. The International Monetary Fund, however, estimates that an escalation of the tit-for-tat tariffs could shave 0.5% off global growth by 2020. US firm Morgan Stanley estimates that a full-blown escalation of the trade dispute could knock 0.81 percentage points off global gross domestic product. In such a backdrop, the emerging market economies in the Asian region have come under severe pressure during the last few weeks, as the rising US interest rates and trade fears have pushed worldwide investors to avoid Asia and move money to the US. Some Asian countries have been hit hard by the sell-off of emerging market assets, such as Indonesia, India and Sri Lanka, with their currencies plunging in value against the US dollar. But not all Asian countries have been negatively affected. For instance, Thailand's currency, the baht, has remained strong in the face of the emerging market rout. Sri Lankan rupee, in the meantime, was at 166 rupees and 50 to 80 cents against the US dollar in the spot market today, from yesterday's close of 165 rupees and 90 cents to 166 rupees and 10 cents, as the central bank announced more cash injections through term reverse repo actions. Overnight repo rates were around 8.2 to 8.3%, with 15 billion rupees borrowed from the window at 8.5%. In such a backdrop, economists highlight this to be a temporary situation, with cutting down import expenditure of the country given as one of the methods to shield the economy from external shocks.
As far as its implications are concerned, I think the most important one has to be the uncertainty that it has created. So if people become more and more uncertain, speculation that affects actually negatively our exchange rate management as well. But however, there is a positive signs as well because it will improve the exporters' income. But of course, those activities, consumption as well as production activities that are dependent on imports, they have to consider cutting down their import expenditure as well.
In the meantime, politicians expressed their views on the rupee depreciation today as well. During the regime of former President Chandrika Bandaranaike, the economy was negative with the LTTE starting its offensive. The central bank was hit hard. Even then, the rupee didn't depreciate like this. The government has misused the rupee, resulting in this depreciation. It is not the usual reason why the rupee is depreciating. With the increase of the dollar, all currencies get depreciated. When our rupee depreciated by 3.1%, the Indian rupee depreciates 5.14%. Every other currency depreciates against the dollar.
Let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day today.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
And now we take a look at your international news. The third summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in kicked off in Pyongyang yesterday. During the three-day summit, the leaders of the two Koreas are expected to announce a series of steps to deepen bilateral exchanges in policies, economy, culture, as well as sports. The decision by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to shut one of the country's main missile testing and launch sites, however, is being considered the highlight of this summit.
The main focus of the Inter-Korean summit was the issue of denuclearization. While the US and North Korea agreed in broad terms earlier this year to work towards that goal, negotiations stalled. North Korea has now sought to reconfirm its commitment. After talks in Pyongyang with South Korean counterpart Moon Jae-in, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signed a pledge to permanently close the Tongcheng-rai facility in the presence of experts from relevant nations. Kim said he would visit Seoul in the near future in what would be the first ever visit to the South's capital by a North Korean leader. Moon said the visit was expected to take place by the end of the year. China has welcomed the outcome of the Inter-Korean summit, saying both sides had found new and important common ground. Meanwhile, defense chiefs of two Koreas also adopt a separate military pact today. The South's defense minister and the head of North Korean army signed an agreement to reduce military tensions, with a buffer zone to be established along the border to prevent accidental clashes. Meanwhile, leaders of the two Koreas will also pursue a bid to co-host the 2032 Olympic Games. Following discussions today, they made a joint statement and also said they had agreed to participate jointly at international competitions, including the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo.
In sports, we have tennis for you. Japan's Naomi Osaka has beaten Dominika Cibulkova 6-2, 6-1 at the Pan Pacific Open in Tokyo today, her first match since winning the US Open. Osaka, who stunned Serena Williams to become Japan's first Grand Slam singles champion earlier this month, produced another display of fearless power hitting to put away Slovak Dominika Cibulkova in just under an hour. The 20-year-old, cheered by the capacity home crowd, raced into a 4-love lead in the opening set and then went on to break her opponent 3 times in the second to ease to victory. We'd like you to take a look at your city-by-city weather forecast for the next 24 hours.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
That's all from Other Derana 24/7, first at 9. But before we go, as usual, we'd like to leave you with some visuals. And tonight, we take you to Anuradhapura, some aerial visuals of the sacred city, one of the ancient kingdoms of Sri Lanka. According to historical records, the city was founded in the 5th century BC and gained more prominence with the introduction of Buddhism. Enjoy these visuals. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.